Hey everyone, welcome back to the home studio. Welcome to episode 4 of the Stevie Richards Show. My name is Stevie Richards. That's how I came up with this creative name for this brand new show. Today we are going to talk about Cody Rhodes. Mentions my name, and also on the interactive whiteboard segment, we're going to talk about AEW. A lot of AEW today, but specifically, we're going to start a continuing series with James and myself, talking about the roster, how we would book it, how we would change the shows, everything down to the lighting, production, and everything. So this is the start of an ongoing series for the AEW fans out there. So before I get into anything else,
say his name and he appears.
His name is James Romero.
Joe, how dare
make that
you?
Clever. How dare I?
It nearly came out Joe Romero.
Wait a minute, that's under like the 6 to 8 seconds. We're not going to get claim blocked or any of that, right?
No, he'll be happy with that. I'm sure old Joe will be happy for us to use it. I'm James, by the way, anyway. I appeared. I say I appeared. We've been here. What do we have? A 50-minute pre-production meeting about AEW and everything else we were saying. There's one more subject as well before we get to it, is we're going to be talking about secrets of the wrestling ring as well, something that we teased last week. And also, very briefly, something we're not going to be talking about this week, but I really wanted to make mention, is because I thought if we were going to do a whiteboard segment, this would have been perfect, was the low blow that... Is it Tangaloa or Tongaloa does on Kevin Owens, but Tama Tonga's like being picked up in like a Tiger Driver kind of thing. And
it's a package pile driver from Kevin Owens, yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, he basically gets low blowed on top of his own head. It's amazing.
If you ever watch the Flintstones, that's how old I am. That's the Barney Rubble. The Barney Rubble, but upside down. Yeah. Like his face when he got like pogo sticked with the fist was...
It is amazing. The economy of movement there to hurt two people on that, even though one of them, is a teammate. The other thing that we're not going to be talking about this week is the botched styles clash. I know I teased this last week, or we teased this last week, and then I realised that, well, Stevie's already done it on his old channel. We'll come back to it at some other point, but don't worry about that. But we will leave that for another day. Very quickly for the intros, we're here every single Friday on YouTube and all podcast platforms. We'll do some plugs as well. I've got 2 books, one on Owen Hart, one on The Rock. Links are in the description to 5 books that I wrote, I like to say. Stevie's got some plugs as well, including the cameos that are picking up very nicely as well.
Yeah, cameo.com/Stevie Richards. Lots of very intelligent questions, kind of based off of this and the former channel that you call the Wrestling Anal channel that's been put dormant. The anal has been hibernating now. So, but yeah, the cameo.com/Stevie Richards. Also, Stevie Richards Fitness is my home and garage gym content, dedicated channel to that as well. And yeah, the botch styles clash, here's a spoiler, 100% my fault. So, but as a pro wrestler, you're taught to tuck your chin, you're instilled in that, you're indoctrinated in that, and the styles clashed instinctively. Is just not everybody can do it. And if you've never seen me do a moonsault, everybody out there, and there's good reason, because that movement of head upside down, hips above me is a very terrifying feeling. So, but we will cover that in a future episode, as well as, like I said earlier, the AEW content is going to be an ongoing series from time to time, and hopefully you'll stick around for that. So what do we have first? Is Cody calling me out the first segment?
It is the first segment, yes. So this is from the Chris Van Vliet interview with Cody Rhodes.
I even did like Stevie Richards' old 20-something minute DDPY take, which is great because I think Stevie Richards now goes online and talks about how none of us know how to wrestle anymore. But so the whole time I was looking at him like, oh, that's the guy. But he's also my instructor in this moment,
Okay, so it's nice to know that Cody Rhodes is a subscriber, if nothing else.
I don't know if it's this, and I have to be fair. I don't know if it's this show, the previous wrestling channel, or he's referring to the Raw SmackDown review with myself, Vince Russo, and Ben Hameen. So I'm not sure. It could be a combination of all three. One thing I will say, first of all, Cody's very dry and sarcastic and has a very different sense of humor, which I can appreciate. And that last line about like, yeah, there's the guy, but he's also my instructor. The only heat I have with Cody, first I want to thank him for not being as rough on me as he is with Disco Inferno. He goes at Disco pretty hard with that stuff, but that's Disco's thing online and how he talks about the business. So You can appreciate his viewpoint with a lot of things. Sometimes the delivery with Disco can be what people focus on. But the real heat I have with Cody is the fact that he did the old 20-minute workout, not my 75-minute one with 100 exploding knees, a 100-second plank. So I would challenge you, Cody, to do that workout, and then you'll probably still come back. And I never said that that none of you can wrestle anymore because God knows I can't wrestle. I consider myself a worker. If it was based on wrestling ability, Cody's a state champion, I believe, or he's a very proficient amateur wrestler, is Xavier Woods. But it would be currently, what's the famous thing? If the business were real, it would be like Brock, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, maybe Taker, two other people, and you would have to, and that's it. That's your wrestling business right there. Billy Gunn, Bob Holly, I think, are two more that could really fit into that. So you'd have like what? 3 hours of Raw Underground every week, Lions Den matches, all that stuff. So, but yeah, I don't take it, I take that as kind of like the dry sense of humor, but also I guess people know that my kind of breakdowns and analysis do exist. And really the mission statement of this, as well as all the other stuff I did, is to really educate the wrestling fan and maybe educate younger wrestlers that aren't good workers, that aren't good wrestlers at this point in their career, and hopefully help them out. Of course, at the same time, James, perception is reality. And I understand that. And I know that when fans or wrestlers or anybody looks at me, they have a particular impression based upon that perception, which is the reality. I lost almost every match. I never really got pushed out of 2 or 3, maybe 4 times in my career, 2 pushes being major, being BWO, which a lot of people, if you never watched DCW, you don't even know about that, and Right to Censor, which I look nothing like that character anymore. So there's a disconnect there as well. So the perception from, the office, the boys, and of course the fans is that I shouldn't have an opinion on this because I was nothing but a scrub, a jobber, lower card, filler, and with the expenses that we put up too, obviously I was one of the lowest paid guys in the company as well. So I traded that for opportunity. But long story short with Cody, I'm entitled to my opinion and he's entitled to his viewpoint. And I have to say this too, coming from AEW to WWE, I held my breath and said, Cody's a great, incredible talent. And I like the Stardust character. I know that's a polarizing thing compared to where he is now. But I knew Cody going back would get over, but I was worried that Vince, being the person that he and Nick Khan, went after and recruited Cody to come back to WWE, said Vince and Nick flew to his house in Marietta, Georgia, and convinced him to sign. I was convinced in my own way that even at the millions of dollars a year they were guaranteeing Cody, that they would make him initially at least an example that AEW guys can't get over here. And then they would start to push him after they proved their point. There were many fans that reached out to me via social media and emails saying, it's laughable to think that Vince would bring or pay Cody all this money to bring him back and not make him world champion. Where I know the pattern of Vince McMahon with AEW guys, with TNA guys, with WCW guys, famously or infamously, Sting stayed out of WWE for how many years? Because of the whole thing with The Rock turning around to Booker T and saying, "Who are you?" That was based on precedent, was my educated viewpoint, which, by the way, I've never been more happy to be wrong about anything in my life. To be wrong, to see Cody finish the story, to see a Rhodes family member be a WWE world champion, which I still believe Dustin should have been a world champion. I believe Dusty should have been a world champion. And let's talk about precedent. What did Vince do to your father when he came from WCW? He put him in polka dots, but with the way the family, all 3 guys, Cody, Dustin, and Dusty, you can hand them anything and they can get it over. And I can see how Dustin and Cody have that in their DNA because Dusty was given a super embarrassing gimmick and twisted it to still be the American dream. So yeah, I've never been, tell me I'm wrong all day long. Cody's a super successful talent. He's one of the most over guys in the business right now. And I hope that continues for many years to come.
Another thing with Cody, he was talking to Chris Van Vliet. I know you've been interviewed by him in the past as well. He's never gone into the specifics of why he left AEW. He's always said that he and Tony Khan would have an agreement to never let the true nature of the sort of breakup, I guess, slip. So, but with Chris, he gave a couple of telling comments.
You ever seen the end of The Dark Knight?
Of course.
I think that's, again, it's super convoluted, and I'm not comparing myself to Batman, but there's a piece of it that's really important. To certain fans from the AEW fandom, they need the story to be, they didn't want me, they pushed me. They need, he was bad, they need that story.
So you're the villain.
They need me to be the villain.
That Gotham needs.
Right, right. I was always fine with accepting that because of the respect I have for it in the first place. How difficult it was to do the original All In, how unbelievable the feeling was to do Double or Nothing, how fortunate we were that Toni wanted to invest in this vision, and he had a vision as well. How special Mad Nick in the BTE era and Kenny and my rivalry in New Japan, especially from a dollars and cents point, that made New Japan more money than anything they ever did. And it made Ring of Honor going through the roof at the time. So regardless of any petty squabbles, I will always have a love for it. I got to wrestle Brody Lee's final match. I got to lead people, young people, behind the scenes. I'll always have a love for it. So the idea that I'm sure there's some negative stuff. I go, oh, this sucked or what, but I just don't. I just remember it lovingly. And I also knew I was leaving. I knew it was a season. I knew this isn't going to last, and there's something greater for me out there. And I know that might sound negative to people, but it's not.
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot of little tells and a lot of little hints of what people had speculated when it happened. It's really coming down to what kind of product creatively do you want to book? Cody, I think, he should have at least had more power to do that, because you think of the EVPs, but really Cody Rhodes was the top of that founding group. You had Kenny Omega, you got the Young Bucks, and then you got Adam Page kind of on the peripheral of that, not as an official EVP, but in that group of BB Elite when they started their YouTube thing and showed that they were friends and they were tight. Cody has a great wrestling mind too. But Cody has a great wrestling mind. Like you said, it's, what did you say? The one thing about it not being the biggest prize in the game, or it's not the end goal for Cody. Like Cody, I think, definitely wanted to go back and right the wrongs of his WWE push. And he's more than done that with it. Yes, there was a push towards the end. And I think I was one of those people that commented during the Russo shows about, yeah, you have to turn him heel. And I even said he either has to leave or he has to turn heel, because this is not good TV right now. This is kind of like you're ignoring the fans and you're still being a babyface the more they boo you for whatever reason that might be.
Well, what's the reason that you remember? Why do you think the fans just turned on him? I mean, was he looked upon as just too WWE?
It could have been Brandy to some point, to a point. The Brandy had a ton of heat. And I think she even turned semi-heel with throwing the drink in Shaq's face and some of the promos that she cut. So it could have been guilt by association. Also, Cody is kind of like, you look at him and he looks tailor-made for WWE, wearing suits, professional. A lot of AEW can be accused of looking indie, and that's one of the points we're going to talk about with the presentation of the product and even the characters. So maybe Cody just stood out, and a lot of the fans turned on him because he didn't look like an AEW talent. I can't quite put my finger on it, but he sure as hell looks like a WWE talent when you present it on TV. It almost, and you're talking about kind of the brand colors that we'll get into and the presentation and the lighting. Cody has very vibrant suits. He's got blonde hair. He's a very visual character on the screen. And maybe it was a visceral rejection of that with the dark, gritty type of presentation of AEW. I can't quite put my finger on it, but guess what? Cody's more successful than he ever would have been in AEW. He's a household name. Even at the top of AEW, wasn't technically a household name. And the way Cody is booked in WWE, and I believe Cody has a hand in that creative control. He doesn't have full, but he has a way to, his whole character came over from WWE. His entrance, his music, the American Nightmare gimmick, the logo, everything came over. So why didn't it work in AEW, but it works with the huge WWE machine? It could have just been the eye test from the AEW fans. This guy doesn't fit in. The eye test from the WWE fans. This is our champion. Finish the story. What are your thoughts on that? It's hard to put your finger on one particular thing.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to talk about this with AEW, but I think they've got too much of an indie mentality overall. I think it's indie for the big screen, or for the silver screen, I guess, in this sense. And Cody seemed, his entire presentation seemed a bit above it.
Too polished.
Maybe too, maybe too polished. Maybe just, I don't know. He just, all that time on the indies after he left, he did the same thing as Drew McIntyre. I think Cody left and Drew was probably fired. I think I was right. I think I'm right in saying. But the fact is they went on the indies and they said, well, you're wrong. You pegged me as this. I will show you where you've gone wrong. And those two have definitely...
What was your first... Wait a minute. So your first clue that this guy didn't exactly fit in was not the really expensive suits, the dress shoes, the blonde hair.
No, I'm talking about WWE. I'm talking about Cody and WWE
okay.
in the mid-2010s. It's like they pegged him in mid-card in the Stardust character. It's like, I'm more than that. And then he spent years proving that he was more than that. And the same with Drew McIntyre. Yeah,
that's going to be. And Drew was let go, and that was a situation we can talk about if I believe too much too soon. And I think Drew's even admitted to that because now he's past it. He had to go away to get over and come back.
Yeah,
Cody had to go away. That's what I knew too, and I tried to get out towards the end, but it was way too late. The perception was reality, and there was no really changing that at that point. Cody was smart. It's a lot. It takes a lot more guts when you're making money, and I'm sure he was making really good money, and you came up through the system from OVW. You paid your dues there. Dusty didn't offer you up any favors or anything. You were there on that island alone at OVW. And if I'm getting any of this wrong, Cody, I'm sure you'll tell me. So he goes to WWE. They give him, the legacy gimmick, I believe, with Ted DiBiase and Randy Orton. They're trying to get a rub on those guys from Randy. Then they got the handsome thing happened with the mustache and the face stuff. And he had a really good match with Big Show, I think, at one of the WrestleManias. I enjoyed that, where Big Show won the Intercontinental. I think it was Orlando. No, that was Floyd Mayweather. But one WrestleMania, Show became Intercontinental Champion against Cody. And it was a really good match. And to be able to get a good match with that size difference out of Big Show, not that he's not good, but when you're that small, how do I keep this competitive? So good on him for that. But when you're making good money and you're on a WrestleMania and you're constantly figured in to some extent, maybe not to the extent you feel like you're capable of, but you're figured in, it's safe money. WWE's never going anywhere. But no, you're going to leave the company voluntarily, go on the indies, go to Japan, go into a place or an area or many areas you've never been before. You get over by writing a list out of the people you want to work, and you put it out in the universe, and it happens. Then you start your own company with Khan's money. But this really was down to Cody and the Bucks and Omega and their vision. And maybe they deferred to Cody at first with his vision, and that's why it kind of took off in the beginning. Then what happens?
Mm-hmm.
All the time with that. Oh my God, if you're listening to the audio, I bang my fist together for the sound.
Well, do you know, just because you're saying,
did I just change the rating with
that?
I'll
do that as well. I'll do the clapping with the fist clapping. I always wonder why, and I don't know if it's just well, people in 2024, everyone holds hands and skips down the street, or at least pretends they do. And, in the old wrestling days, it was a more, hard-nosed kind of affair and everyone was out for themselves. But I don't know why 4 active wrestlers on the roster thought they could all be EVPs and all get along just fine. Because ultimately, you might think that no one's got an ego and we're all in it together kind of thing, but at some point someone's going to disagree. And it happened. And then it was Cody who ends up leaving.
Well, and Khan's the final deciding vote on all that. And I know he wanted to get along with everybody. And that's where Vince has his infrastructure, his chain of command when he was there. Hunter probably has that too. The final say should be with one person. You can hash it out and do whatever. Vince used to famously call it when he would book at his home, and he had Cornette, Russo, believe it or not, they were sitting and working together at one point, or anybody else that was booking the show. Vince would go off and take a call, and Vince and Cornette would talk. Russo and Cornette would say, they would try to come up with stuff, and Vince McMahon would call it, probably not a good term at this point with Vince, mental masturbation. There's nothing that can be done until Vince comes and sits down and then you pitch it to him. So you're almost wasting your breath, wasting your time, wasting your energy in that term he uses. Khan needed to be that and still needs to be that. He needs to be the final say, not on TV, but, hey, I want to pitch something to Jerry Lynn. Hey, what do you think about this? Oh, it's good. Hey, we should go to one of the people in management. I don't even know if they have writers. Or let's go straight to Khan and see where Jerry goes, he's not going to really go for that. And you may go, okay, I'm going to go past you if it's okay and give my idea to Khan directly. Or you go directly to Toni with that. But I don't see that as being the infrastructure. And that's one of the points of the list of mistakes and solutions, or a list of problems and solutions for AEW. So, yeah, I mean, there's too many hands in the pot. What do you think about this, James? Can you name any single instance in wrestling history where an active wrestler that's on TV is also in charge of creative booking or management? Has that ever worked out?
Only sometimes. Kevin Nash sure didn't work out. There's Jerry Lawler. That did work out. But he only booked half the year. I'm trying to think. I mean, there are a lot of wrestlers / bookers. I mean, I know Ernie Ladd did some booking. I'm sure he booked his own stuff. There are loads, I'm sure, with different degrees of success.
Here's an interesting question. Do you think Jerry Lawler, who was the most over guy in Memphis forever, was it the chicken and the egg? Was Jerry Lawler so over because he booked half the year and the other half of the year was somebody that knew he would book him on top? Because it was always coming through Memphis, creating a monster for 3 months for Lawler to slay, and then that monster goes somewhere else. And Lawler's always there. Even when Ric Flair would come to Memphis, it would either be a time limit draw, a dusty finish, or something where Lawler would stay over. My question is, if Lawler was never Booker and he was strictly a talent in Memphis, would he be in the same spot?
Well, the thing is, I think in the old days, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, is that one, you would get over to the point that then you would buy into the company or else threaten to leave. So therefore, you've got points in the company anyway, and then you've got say over yourself for years to come until the territory dies out or you sell up.
Well, that's a tough question. That's a Dutch question for sure. He was really busy helping me out with the whiteboard segment this week, but I'm sure he can get some time. That's a really tough question. But then back then with Lawler, he was, I don't know at what point, he was under the NWA, management. They had a whole committee with the NWA that would say, this guy's going to be the champion. They would literally vote on who would be that. I don't know if Lawler had any.
No. They were with the AWA mostly. They did get the occasional NWA champion, but Ric Flair only went once, and he never went back.
Oh, really? Only one time?
Only one time.
Wow. But AWA had a direct relationship, obviously. He won the AWA title.
Yeah, because Nick Bockwinkel would come down periodically, Kurt Hennig would, and then I think one of their titles was like AWA Southern Heavyweight Championship at one point as well. So
we need to cover, and Dutch probably knows more than I do, that the infamous story of Super Clash 3, where all the companies got together but all the companies were trying to steal each other's talent in the locker room during the show. They were trying to usurp and book, and it became a nightmare. It was an excellent show, but it was a mishmash of, you get 3 or 4 different companies together trying to figure out who's going to go over, who's going to do the job. I mean, it's,
and they can't figure out who's
that.
going to have breakfast or what they're going to have for breakfast that day, let alone.
Yeah.
And then I'm sure the Memphis guys said that Vern Gagne stiffed them on pay as well. And I know that Dutch was jobbed out with like the Pro Wrestling USA thing. Dutch was jobbed out immediately.
That might be something for the Storytime show.
Yeah.
To go
Oh, well,
deep,
we've talked
deep
about it.
dive
We've watched it. There's actually a match from Pro Wrestling USA tapings in Memphis where Dutch loses in like 2 minutes to Harley Race. And it's in the Memphis Coliseum. Or Mid-South Coliseum, sorry. It's like, why would you do that to one of your
Dutch,
biggest stars?
stop stealing my gimmick. Don't steal my gimmick, Dutch. I would have did it in 90 seconds. I already had Goldberg like match times.
Oh no, he was truly shafted on that one. Absolutely. Getting back on Cody briefly. No, I will leave Cody. We're going to go straight into the next thing, AEW expenses.
Cody, in all seriousness, once again, to cap this off, you proved a lot of people wrong, and I'm happier than anybody that you did. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep that up. And also, Cody has the school in Georgia where he's trying to help and teach the younger talent or future generations. So, yeah, he's leaving a legacy. No pun intended for his former gimmick, but definitely leaving a positive legacy in the business.
So we're talking about AEW expenses now, and then that's going to launch into some other stuff. We're going to talk about AEW, including the rosters and sort of problems and solutions to some of their stuff that don't relate to booking. That's another story for another day. But we're going to have a look at expenses. And this was released quite recently, in like the last week or two, I think. And it relates to AEW Double or Nothing and the Collision tapings in Nevada. So this was late May, I think, if I'm right. If it isn't, I'm wrong. So we're going to put this on the screen. We're going to have a look at some of these expenses that total just under $4 million for one pay-per-view and one Collision taping, which is, you must have had the same thing as me, Stevie, is when you saw it. It's like, how did they manage to spend $4 million on 2 shows, which I think may have even been in the same building?
Yeah, I think it was. I'm looking up the date right now. It was May 20. I need my glasses. I'm getting older. May 26, 2024. Attendance 9,000 people. Buy rate 134,000 buys. This is Wikipedia, so I'm not even sure if it's true or not. But yeah, looking at this is a really high cost. I mean, you're good for having the Collision taping in the same building if you do that, but I wish we were taking it in for the show, a total of $3,869,000. Transportation and amenities, airfare, $150,000, hotels, $250,000, catering, $50,000, rental cars, $30,000, MGM Grand rental, $110,000 for 2 days. That was the best deal they got on that. The arena setup, LED lighting and rigging, $105,000.
Now this is very interesting that I want to bring up. I'm sorry to interrupt you here. So
no, because this is part of the presentation. You're paying for that much for what we're seeing, you know?
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? So let's get onto the staging straight away. So Collision staging and Double or Nothing staging and Dynamite staging is the same, isn't it? I mean, they've got the 2 tunnels and then a big screen on top. Okay, so surely at some point they've bought this, right? They're not just renting this every single time. But let me just read this here. Lighting and rigging, $105K. And then 2 down, rigging, $66,000. So they've got rigging here for a total of over $170. Operational tech support, $400,000. What are they spending?
I want to let everybody
money on?
know out there, I have a tech channel too, Tony Khan. So if you want to give me that $400,000, I can remote in on TeamViewer.
I just see. I wish I knew what some of these sound package. I mean, is that for the royalties for certain songs? Is that for? It can't be for PA. I mean, the arena will have PA, but a sound package.
I pay $69 a year to audio. Save a little bit of money there too. These are these are figures we got online, that we got a week or 2 online, and we don't know the accuracy of these numbers, but we've seen Khan throw money around to where these don't look that far off. And if you're taking care of the talent, talking about rental cars, catering, hotels, airfare, spend money on the talent, make them happy. But get back to there's more. I mean, there's transportation of show goods, $50,000.
What does that even mean? I mean, so it's all the trucks that are taking all the staging from here, there, and everywhere. I mean, where was lighting? That made me laugh. Oh, yeah. $105K on lighting. It's like you could just get a firefly in a jam jar and have the same effect, and that'll be free, except for the price of the jam jar. Pyro services is one thing. Staging, $10,000. It's the exact same stage. What are they buying for this? It's their stage. Surely they've bought outright. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, how much are they renting for every single show instead of just paying a bit more, investing in the stage and just buying everything outright? And then all you've got to pay for is the trucks and the riggers.
Well, I'm going to talk about like what I know. The limited amount of I know from the WWE kind of infrastructure, the way it works. I had a friend, Rich Baker, by the way. We're going to talk about event booking. He was a master of event booking. He and his boss, the supervisor in event bookings, I think his name was Ed. These guys would book literally a year out and be able to really, we talked about last week with the traveling, or the clips up on the channel right now. And he would make sure that drives were far enough away from the shows, but not so far away to where the talent got worn down. It takes it's almost an art. But what I'm getting into there, I think Rich and Ed and the team were also responsible for where the trucks are going, where the trucks are at. I think WWE literally has, and they definitely had, trucks on the road like all days of the week, either going to a show, leaving a show, going to the next show, setting up, making sure everything's there. And yeah, WWE probably bought the trucks, bought everything. Each truck had its own thing. And of course, when you have multiple shows, you're going to have multiple fleets of trucks. You know what I mean? Sometimes Raw and SmackDown or whatever they're doing pay-per-view wise might not be within, that area to get set up in a proper time and test everything, because they need to test the lighting, test the pyro, test the sound, get there almost a day before to get it all done. But this here looks like, I'm with you. It looks like they're renting everything for every show. And I could be wrong. Or it's his dad's, it's a write-off. They're meant to lose money for the NFL franchise or for the company that's, they're a subsidiary under, and his dad needs the write-offs for this. I mean, his dad famously said, like, yeah, I'm just going to give my kids the money to blow before I'm gone and let them enjoy it now. So there's literally, this company was built on basically play money. So these figures might look like you and I would be homeless on the streets and not be able to even buy ramen noodles. But for Khan, blowing $20 million a year is nothing. So is that a possibility that renting it is for a specific reason, if that's what they're doing?
I'm just looking here. So let's say a pay-per-view gets 140,000 buys at $60. I actually put instead of $50. Okay, just excluding everything else and how I worked out, let's call it about 4 million they make off the pay-per-view. But there's only 8 of those a year. So let's assume that the pay-per-view doesn't matter. And actually it's a Dynamite taping and then a Collision taping. And then it's basically the same show. And then you're basically paying people the same amount. So really, if it was just a regular week without $4 million worth of pay-per-view revenue coming in, I mean, here are the, I think I've got it here. I think the gates between the two is anywhere between $700,000 and $900,000 in gates, and that doesn't include merchandise and stuff like that. But it seems to me on the weekly, AEW is losing a tremendous amount of money. Now, we're not factoring in the 1.5 million a week they get from Turner, from WBD as well to top that up. But we know for a fact that AEW hasn't turned a profit since it existed. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And we also know that WBD and Tony Khan are still in negotiations. Tony Khan has been in, I don't know anything really about American football, in the red zone. They're at the 1 yard line. I mean, they've been on that damn 1 yard line for about 3 months now with the negotiations.
Well, I think they're playing that game of chicken I talked about. I use that analogy, that metaphor a lot. The game of chicken is the Warner Brothers Discovery is also restructuring everything. They cut a lot. That's what they did. The AEW is now having, like you said, content is king, but ratings have to mean something. If nobody's watching, say, Collision. Collision's one of the shows you and I were talking about in our pre-production. That's tough. It's like the odd man, and ROH is even more like, we'll get into that. But Dynamite and Rampage can have a good draw. They just need to make the adjustments with that. But no matter what adjustments you make creatively, financially, if every single year your payroll is going up, your ratings are going down, attendance is going down, and no amount of merchandise and then you got the Fight Forever video game, how much money did that lose? I just saw it free on PlayStation Plus and maybe $10 new at GameStop. So they definitely need, there was how many millions of dollars or tens of millions of dollars that were thrown into the game.
At some point, I thought this is a number I'm plucking out of my mind for ages ago. What, 20 to 30 million probably they invested in it, and this website's not loading to tell me what it was.
I knew it was at least 10 to 20 million.
Yeah.
That's what I had heard about that. And it was definitely late. The release date was way behind from what I remember, correct?
Yeah, here's the other thing that I found funny about that is that didn't they take CM Punk?
They had to do something with Punk too.
Yeah, there was a thing with Punk, and then he was on the cover, and then he wasn't on the cover, and then it was too late for him to put him back on the cover somehow. And here's the other thing. They put 10 wrestlers, I think, on the cover of that. So that's 10 cover stars you've got to pay as well, which I'm sure is very philanthropic for Tony Khan to do as well, but that's more expense.
Well, that's a gray area though. Are they paying royalties? Are they paying royalties on the video game? And in WWE, at least towards the end when I was there, you can be on the main roster. That's when you get paid. And that's why when I was there early in my career there and got into a couple games, those checks are really good. But there's also something with DLC where you're not going to get a royalty or you're going to get a fraction. So if you're in the DLC, like I think they added Jay White or something I saw recently to DLC, and they did a segment backstage. But you may not get that. The guaranteed contracts in AEW, I don't know if they're just all encompassing, no matter t-shirt sales or whatever, or if you have an incentive to make more money with t-shirt sales, video games, action figures, stuff like that. I assume Tony Khan is not going to be greedy like that he wants to take care of the talent. So I'm assuming he's paying royalties. Now,
let's also discuss the miscellaneous. There was a couple of them. Cleanup was $14,000. Ground transportation, $2,000. That drops in the bucket compared to most things.
I wish I had that. If I was getting taken in that much miscellaneous, I hope our AdSense gets up for that.
Hey, you know what? Tony Khan should invest in some skateboards or something like that, and then he could just wheel them out for every. Anyway, people. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. The last one, especially. Production consultants, $15,000. In-house security, $60,000, which I found a pretty incredible number. Because how much are you paying one security man for a day? What, $500? You don't need 120 people there doing security.
I don't even think Trump pays that much for his personal security or any of these people that are corporate giants.
That's included in the package.
Yeah. I want to back up to the first one. I think that's the Easter egg if it's true. What is a production consultant? Is there one that maybe observes wrestling that's on the payroll? Is there a certain wrestler observer that gets paid this consultant fee? Because there was a previous pay sheet a few years ago where he was on there. Or other people that like talk positively about AEW. Basically, it was under PR, not under consultant. Do you remember that way back?
No,
I don't. There was an April pay sheet that came from like Daily Palace, whatever it's called in Jacksonville.
Yeah, Dailies. Yeah.
Dailies. I'm sorry. So they had a pay sheet like this, like it was itemized and everything. Whether it was real or not, I don't know, but it was PR and media, and it was a good amount that was, basically itemized with names on it. Could it be fake? I don't know. But production consultants makes me think that it's people like Meltzer and everybody else that are contributing to the booking of AEW, and they have Khan's ear.
I was just also looking at the next one here. Local management services, $100,000.
We'd like to announce that James and I are starting the Stevie Richards local management services right now. We will undercut this by $5,000 and save you some money, Tony.
For goodness sake.
Great deal.
I'm even. What does even
stagehands make more? The stagehands are driving friggin' like BMW Series 7s. $135,000. Read that number. I can't get
right. So we've got local management services at $100,000. Stagehands, $135,000 for 2 shows. What do they do? So are they riggers? Are they cable pullers?
I'm going to answer this with one word. That could explain it. Could explain this kind of like they literally are turning him upside down and shaking his pockets. Union. That's you think these numbers are crazy, but I don't know if these payments, if accurate, we got to keep saying that. We don't know. We're going off of the information online, but it's great for clickbait. We can do stagehands 135,000 over my
million.
Or me, but can you do an AI thing with me dressed as a stagehand?
Yes, of course I can.
135,000.
Man, here's the big one though. Talent, $2 million. So last week you said AEW's probably paying their talent, or you read recently, $100 million or even slightly over $100 to $105 million per year on talent. And I was thinking, stop it. And then I looked at this and I was like, well, this is 1 week. Times that by 52. Is it downside guarantees where they give them a bonus for pay-per-view appearances? Or is it just a flat rate? I keep trying to look, I can't find the answer. I could actually investigate and find the answer. But this would suggest $100 million just on talent. So that would be the wrestlers, the managers, the referees, the commentators, backstage interviews, that kind of thing. $2 million.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to announce my short-lived
return to wrestling.
No, I've retired from a stagehand, and now I am an active wrestler once again.
Unreal.
I can pivot and just.
It's unreal. It's unreal.
I'm just laughing because it's like this could be real. This could be real, and it's just if you got the money and you're paying. Like I said, I want the talent pay and the amenities for the talent. Pay them. They're putting their bodies on the line. They're leaving their families, their loved ones. They only have so many bumps. They only have so much time in this business. Make them as comfortable as you can. Pay them as much as you can. The WCW, back when I was on Nitro and everybody was happy, they were getting paid. Everybody was making a living. It was guaranteed. We were paid like professional athletes. This is what I hope is true with AEW, that guys and girls are getting overpaid. Let them get overpaid. Just save your money. And hopefully Tony and his father doesn't wake up one day and talk to Tony and just say, I'm done. And people got on me for saying that multiple times, that Shad Khan could wake up one day and just decide to close it down. Pay everybody out, close it down. I'm tired of dealing with it. I need you for the Jaguars. I need you for the soccer team. That makes us money. This loses us money. You're done. And then people go, you can't just close a company down. What about this, that, and there? Yes, he can. Yes, he could if he really wanted to. So thank you, Shad Khan, for continuing to fund this, because there's lots of people that are feeding their families, supporting their families in a really tough economy. So you paying them that much, go get your money.
So this is from the Wrestling Observer. So apparently the source of these numbers is from Mike Mansouri. He filed forms for tax credits in Nevada listing the, as it's written here, expresses, but he means expenses, Dave Meltzer, for the TV taping and Double or Nothing pay-per-view show. So I know the name Mike Mansouri. Who is he in AEW?
I do not know. I do not know. I do know that the Express what we would be on, the Express train or the Express flight once we got our pay before Tony Khan changes his mind. Oh, I may have overpaid you.
Right, then we're going to move on. So this is really, I'm sorry to say, everybody, obligatory what is wrong with AEW section here. But we're not actually going to be mean. There's two things we're not going to do. We're not going to talk about the booking of AEW. That's for another video, for another episode. But what we are going to be talking about is things that can be done to AEW to turn their fortunes around. Because as Stevie and I, and I'm sure everybody watching and listening to this knows, AEW's ratings are down, interest is down in AEW. If you, just because we've got the Observer up here, if you listen to Dave Meltzer, it's quote unquote a perception problem, and because WWE is hot, therefore AEW is cold. It isn't. That's not the thing at all. But there are some issues with AEW here. We're going to name some of them, and we're also going to, well, Stevie is especially going to come up with some of the solutions we believe that could be implemented in short order to turn around AEW's fortunes, or at least sort of stem the tide of viewership losses and drive up ticket sales in the immediate future. So you've got a list of solutions and problems and potential solutions as well. So if you want to take it away, Stevie.
Yeah, I think, and it's good because we have different takes on this, and we even are going to debate some of these things, especially when we get the roster stuff and everything. And we invite everybody, once again, as always, comment below. Let us know. This is interactive. Everybody can have an opinion. Everybody can have a viewpoint. Everybody can agree and disagree, or both at the same time. And that's what this show is all about. So, see, I didn't say podcast. I almost did. So, number one, the identity or lack thereof on the shows. The shows have no identity. And when you have this many hours of TV and this many shows, you need an identity for each one. What is AEW Dynamite? What is AEW Rampage? What is AEW Collision? Well, let's throw it in there. What's Ring of Honor and how does that fit into that? What do we have? What is the identity for each show? And I have we can talk about it when we go to the roster section and talk about our roster stuff. But basically, the shows have no identity. Lots of action, lots of athleticism, a little bit of story here and there, but you don't know when to expect it. You don't know what to expect. And like you just said off camera, I believe pre-production, there was a match from Collision with Dynamite Kid's nephew and
Takeshita.
Thank you. Takesha's a good name too, especially for Philly people. But really good match, really athletic, intense, hard hitting. But it was a 50-50 match that went, 16 minutes? Something. It went really, really long. So, and I knew nothing about this kid. So that kind of thing. What's the identity of the wrestlers on the show? What are they going for? What am I looking at here? And that really needs to be, because everything is a wrestling match. And I'm not saying they're bad wrestling matches, but everything seems to be a wrestling match or wrestling match based. No cliffhangers. That's another thing with the identity of the show. When have you ever seen a cliffhanger at the end of an AEW show?
Well, there was a sort of cliffhanger. Well, there was a big angle. There was a couple recently. There was the Mariah May and Toni Storm thing with the belt and the blood and the stiletto shoe. How much of a cliffhanger that was, I don't know, but at least it was a heavy angle. And then there was a similar thing with Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland, where Swerve kicked Ospreay right in the end to turn on him and build interest for their match for whatever pay-per-view it was last month as well. So they are trying to do a bit more these days, something big to end the show on. How much of those were cliffhangers, I don't know.
What I'm saying is, in essence, we look at WWE, and this is the only thing we can compare it to right now. The bloodline is getting heat at the end of shows. Not every show, they 50-50 book too, and the baby faces are up 1 week, heels are up, but there's no true, commentators lay out, this is a big moment. Oh my God, this is ominous. And this is going to lend also to the TV presentation that we're going to get into next, but there's nothing there to say, we go off the air, we have credits, and then we pick it up in the next episode. In other words, there's no continuity with these shows as far as identity either. It's just really like the period at the end of the show. And WWE has been more guilty than not guilty over the past few years, but I think they're trying to steer that right over the past few months. Rocky beating Cody up outside the bus before WrestleMania and bleeping out the F, and it felt real, like it was outside the arena. And I think that's another thing they need to do is not just vignettes, but give us some cinematic stuff like Darby Allin and Sting when they had their tag match at one time, and other things. Give us characters outside the arena.
Yeah, on location. Now, not to apologies for interrupting. Dutch was a huge proponent of that, especially in Puerto Rico. He would film stuff all over the place because the arena can be claustrophobic. And I mean, back when you were a kid, this is a tiny bit before my time, but I always remember when you saw backstage, and this is an obvious one for people a bit older than me who was watching Saturday night's main event, when Hulk Hogan carried Elizabeth back and then Savage ran after him, and then they did the thing backstage. That felt really special because you didn't really see the locker room that much. I like that kind of thing backstage that much, where I really like the idea that seeing the backstage area is special beyond a specific area where you do the interviews. If you know what I mean, you've got a nice professional looking backdrop and that.
Well, not only that, but they used to do the picture-in-picture during someone's match. This is how you can tighten it up and get the promos you need and get the angles and storylines furthered. In WWE Wrestling Challenge or Superstars on Saturday morning would do it, and then Raw and all the art. When I'm in the ring, the guy I have the angle with would cut a promo, and he would just have the blue backdrop. Like you say, we didn't even see the backstage area, I believe, more than maybe one handful of times until that Hogan and Savage thing where they went into there and then Brutus Beefcake made his famous cameo. Oh shit, not yet. Remember that?
Yeah. My favorite, this is apropos of nothing. My favorite is when Sonny is interviewing Vader and then Hawk walks in, and they're backstage, and then Hawk walks in and he does this. And then just back straight out again.
Goes back into the door, yeah.
This is how pathetic I am. It was on the No Way Out pre-show free-for-all. That's how pathetic I am that I know that. Well, right, so what was the first point
those live shows before the pay-per-view?
Loved them.
They're gold mine. Sid, hey, we're live, pal.
We're live, pal.
Botchamania was born on these days.
Right, so what was the first point that you were making? We sort of veered off it then. We're trying not to talk about the booking, by the way.
No, we're not. Identity shows.
Right. So, if you will indulge me a little bit. So, this is something we were talking about in pre-production as well. There's 8 pay-per-views a year around that time, and I think they're trying to get it to 12, one a month. So, winter is coming. Beach Break, Battle of the Belts, Blood and Guts. The only one that's got its own visual identity to a point is Grand Slam. But the others are just names for episodes. I mean, Battle of the Belt. Oh, yeah, I said Battle of the Belts. But there are loads of different specials, quote unquote, where they've got a special name for a regular episode of Dynamite, and then that's it, really. There's nothing. I mean, why would you have Beach Break in Chicago?
Well, also, Winter is Coming was in Florida one time.
Yes.
I wish winter was coming. It's hot as hell here. So, but yeah, I mean, to me, that's also this is strictly speculation. Sometimes people in wrestling just like to do it to pop themselves and the boys. Like, hey, let's have Beach Break in Chicago, or let's have Beach Break in Calgary, and then have the Owen Hart thing as far away from Calgary as possible.
Well,
but
let's make Martha Hart fly.
The Owen Hart tournament is another one, and then there's tons of cool concepts that they have as far as identity, but we don't know where does that fit into the schedule. That's where a Rich Baker and an Ed or an event booking committee that can really figure out a theme. Even a Halloween themed show, like Halloween Havoc is not around anymore outside NXT. How fun would a Halloween themed show? Maybe where you spin the wheel, and now you have to wear that deal. Person. You have to do their gimmick. Like everybody in the ECW on a house show. I wasn't there at the time. They did a house show in Connecticut where everybody dressed as other people in the company and imitated them and dressed as them for Halloween. And the boys said that was one of the most energetic, fun shows with the crowd and the boys, and everybody was having a good time. They were still working hard, but it was just a different concept. And it's got to be fun. Wrestling, that's a thing too. I put it up here. You need to have some fun. It can't always be, oh, I'm going to kick your ass. I'm going to do this. I'm going to destroy you. I'm going to beat you bloody. We need to have some kind of comic relief and fun.
Do you know who that was? Was
Danhausen.
Danhausen. Where's he? Nowhere.
We're going to get to the roster thing. Toni Storm kind of fills that because she's so over the top.
But the thing is, she's meant to be a main eventer, though. And I mean, like, how funny can you be if you're meant to be the top draw for the division? You know,
Well, Joe Henry's a top draw in a lot of ways right now. A lot of interest. You know, he's trying to go to the next level, but it's not so much comedy. It's Hameen would say, she's committed to the bit. She has an identity. I can tell you, Al Snow, I'm quoting other people because it's universal. Al Snow, I can tell you what Toni Storm is in one sentence. Short sentence. We know what Toni Storm is. Oh, she's like the 1920s British actress in black and white. Every time she comes on in black, whoever did that, came up with that and got the whole package, that's the person you need to go to more about other characters in the company. Because it's done to perfection. It really is. And it's her, too.
People complain about her. People complain about Toni Storm because it's too WWE-like.
Oh, my God. Are you serious?
Yeah. Some AEW diehards don't like Toni Storm, timeless Toni Storm, because it's too much of a gimmick, and that's not what AEW is supposed to be about, man. That kind of thing. But the thing is, she's one of the best. She's the best thing in the women's division. Easily.
Okay, and Tony Khan listens to these fans, to these people that are already going to watch no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't the people you try to get. You try to get the people and she's an international star. And also she managed to reinvent herself after a really, really tough run in WWE, a very short, tough run where she was basically embarrassed on her way out.
You nearly called her British, by the way. She's from New Zealand.
Sorry.
I just went international. I saw it.
But you know what? It doesn't, in a way, it doesn't matter because I just go to that because of the prim and proper and very classic, literally classical presentation that she has. My mind goes to that. So, and if somebody called her that, guess what she would do? Correct me, call me whatever, use the terminology, and then kind of go off. You know what I mean? Get over doing that.
We've come up with the problem with the identification or lack of identity between not only all three TV shows, but the pay-per-views as well. UFC-like, in a way, in that every UFC pay-per-view looks the same, and it has done for years and years and years. How do we solve that?
Well, when we get to the whiteboard, I'll be able to explain it in greater detail, but you have to figure out what is Dynamite, what is Rampage, and how to make them completely separate shows. In other words, we have talents going. There's enough talent to where they don't have to travel from Dynamite, Rampage, then Collision, ROH, or whatever it might be. You go off of that. What's our identity? And also, what can we do at both of these shows as far as identity to bring in fans that wouldn't bother? Like you just from right down, and you say Kevin Sullivan said this. Let's change the color of the brand on these shows. Let's give it a complete makeover. Let's change the lighting. They rent the lighting, so you just rent new lighting and stages, no matter what.
$400,000 on different colored filters for the lights.
It just might not be there. So,
blue.
I would say too, and we're going to talk about this too. Let's just go and skip down to this because I think this is one of the main points. You're talking about TV presentation, all that stuff. Also, the booking venues are too large. Need a more intimate thing. I don't think there's any talent out there that would say, I'd rather have a building that's a third full, but we're in a 20,000 seat arena. They would rather see, man, this thing fits 3,000 people and we got standing room only at 3,500 or $4,000. And they are loud and we can make it look good.
Make it seem like a party. Where in a cavernous 20,000 seat arena where only 3,000 people are there and you can't even see them because there's no lighting, which is another point, then what encourages you to go and want to be part of that?
I can see why they darken it in a way, because obviously the upper decks and everything are usually empty, and they think they're having an intimate type of a presentation, which there could be a show that has that identity, more gritty, in a bar, in a smaller thing, darker. But people go to the TVs, at least I believe, to be on TV and be seen, to see this. There's a certain psychology that says when they're in the dark, they can boo and scream and do whatever. But I believe that's not the way it is anymore. Like nobody cares about being anonymous. Everybody has social media. They want to be known. So the lights, you're right, need to be up, need to show the fans, need to show, you don't know, so you can hear them, but fans getting on their feet during a finish or a big spot or a big move, man, you're like, looking, wow, everybody's excited. You get excited watching the fans through there. So yeah, they need to change that to where the lighting's different, where they light the fans. I mean, God knows they have $105,000 in lights. They can definitely shoot. They can definitely light a few fans here and there. But these are small changes that can make a big difference. Just the presentation alone with the talent, the matches, and everything else staying the same. If you just present it differently, shoot it differently, light it differently, and also fill a small building, you have a completely different show right there.
I want to bring up something now. So we're talking about lighting. As I say, apart from the ring, everything's too dark. On the Collision episode, first things first, Don Callis comes out with Takeshita, and then he just walks into the darkness on the stage. And I was like, where's he going? He was going to the commentary table that also wasn't lit in just complete blackness. And I don't even think did we even get a camera with Don Callis at commentary?
I don't think so. I think we only got him at the promo at the end with Dynamite Kid.
So that's more production issues then. So I'm going to basically bring up some production stuff. And apart from lighting, which is an issue, of course, not only in the arenas where they are, but backstage as well. They're lit horribly. And this is something that can really be remedied very quickly. But also, I contend, you tell me what you think, is that everything is so black. Ring aprons. The entranceway, apart from a few bits of lights here, I mean, they may be trying to pay homage to Nitro back in the day, but they're not. It's mostly black with a screen. And then as I say, the ring aprons, the posts, I think the ropes might have been white, but the mats, and half the wrestlers are wearing black as well. It's like WCW from 2000. It is so drained of colour that it's not appealing to look at. And I'll mention one more thing. The backstage vignettes. I don't like it when the interviewers are interviewing people either in front of a curtain, which they could just be in their hotel room doing, or even worse, doing it in just somewhere backstage in just somewhere, just with some rigging background, all that expensive rigging, just, lying around, or, stagehands moving around. And it looks so low rent, where you could just have a nice set backstage. And then the other thing I want to mention is instead of having a handheld camera, have a fixed camera on a tripod so it looks more cinematic when they're getting interviewed, which is something that I would really like to see come back. That's more of an 80s thing, I understand, but I love that setup. It's a blue screen in the background, fixed camera, slow zooms, and all you have to focus on is the wrestler talking. Sorry, I've given you a ton of things there to react to. But.
Well, yeah, I also think maybe, like we were talking cinematic, do you think that they should film at, like, say, 24 frames a second? Do you think they should make it as cinematic as they can? Do you think they should use...
No, it should be a live sports presentation. It should look like a live sports presentation. I've seen... Didn't they do that for, like, Lucha Underground or something?
They did it in Lucha Underground, and some at TNA did it for a little bit as well with Killer Cross and other people backstage. It was filmed in film. Jeremy Borash was responsible. At least give me some differentiation or a different type of look. If you can't do that, then I would lean heavily towards vignettes, things outside the arena. Then when you get an interview in the arena, it's got to be picture in picture. It's more efficient. Someone's wrestling and you're cutting a promo on them as they're wrestling about what's going to happen when you guys finally meet and get in the ring together. Then you just switch it. Guy that was doing the interview the week before is in the ring. Guy that was in the ring doing the interview. That's what drew pay-per-view money for Vince for so many years. It's simple, and everybody gets to talk. You don't want to do it every single match, but you can do it a lot in the beginning to get the talent over. Plus, some of these talents' live promos in the ring, you need to avoid that. It's very much a weakness for some of the talents. I'd rather produce them than let them go out there and fail like that.
Is there anything else? Because I've got quite a few things. Ring of Honor, very briefly. This is more of an administrative thing. Do we do anything with it? Do we cancel it?
He paid a lot of money for Ring of Honor, 40 million, right?
No, that was the reported thing. I think he actually said it was more like 4 million. So if it's 4 million, that's for a song. Just for the tape library, that's not too bad of a deal.
Yeah, but if you don't have a TV deal and you don't have a TV, anything set up, and somebody goes to Ring of Honor and you said they have like 10,000 subscribers on Honor Club, so it's a streaming service that's ROH, so you can't even put AEW on there. So it's a very weird thing. 4 million, that's fine, but I think Vince McMahon bought the WCW library and all the stuff for less than that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were
2.5.
They were 2.5. So ROH there, I'd say it was more of a dead property than even WCW for that. I don't know. If I were WWE, I would try to buy the tape library off of AEW in order to have, they get TNA, they get ROH. Now AJ, Cody, all these people, now you have these documentary DVDs or these documentary type of thing on streaming. Now you have a whole library of matches with AJ Styles, Cody, everybody, Damian Priest as Punisher Martinez. You got a lot of stuff. I would almost offer Khan double that because you'll make that 4 million you overpaid back in an instant.
What else do we have as far as things to bring up?
Time slots.
Time
slots, especially for Rampage and Collision, the date and the time. Dynamite's in a good spot. But Rampage, and we're going to get to that on the whiteboard. Rampage Friday at 10 p.m. The identity of the show does not match a Friday at 10 p.m. time slot. And who would want to watch that? I guess they assumed the lead-in from SmackDown would automatically spill over wrestling fans, but it doesn't. Collision Saturday at 8 p.m. outside of a pay-per-view weekend. Man, that's an odd time and day for that as well. What do you think?
I don't know what you're going to say here. So let's say WBD renews 5 hours worth of AEW television every week. Forget about the pay-per-views. So you've got 2 of Dynamite, 2 of Collision, and then 1 of Rampage. But you get to choose where you put those 5 hours. What do you do?
Well, I would vehemently disagree right off the bat based on our pre-production meeting that I would not make Dynamite 3 hours. 3 hours.
Really?
As Kevin Nash would say, I do not want to watch anything that requires I insert a catheter. So it's long, man. It's long. Even football understands, and that's why they created Red Zone. For people who don't, well, it's the diehards want to sit there for 3 hours, but Red Zone is way, way popular for that. It's a tough thing. It's very tough. I would say ideally, if I can get it for the same amount of money, I would do 4 hours of TV, not 5.
Let's say that's not an option. No, let's say it's not an option because I'll guarantee that WBD does not want to lose hours of AEW because it's still one of their hotter properties, especially since NBA's gone now or is going. So let's say you have to have 5 hours a week.
I'm going to steal half of your idea from the pre-production meeting then, because you were very right about this. And this goes along with the drab colors and lighting. 2 hours of Dynamite, 1 hour of Rampage, 2 hours of Collision Saturday morning from 9 to 11 or 10 to noon. I would do that. I would give the 2 hours for try to experiment with more of a kids product, more of a family friendly product, have the little bit of the longer matches, maybe some are themed one way or the other. I would put the 2 hours Saturday morning because you're really running unopposed. And Saturday morning wrestling is what I grew up with. And it made me want to be a pro wrestler. That's where you talked about it before, the booking and having enhancement matches on the prime time shows. That's the Saturday morning show to get your full-time roster over and get younger talent or local talent a chance to at least get some TV time. You don't get in the way of the WWE Saturday night pay-per-views. You don't get in the way of people wanting to go out on Saturday night. And you have kind of a captive audience Saturday morning. Even some adults might be like, yeah, I'm going to the gym. I'm going to turn on AEW and watch a little bit of it as I do cardio or work out.
I think, because this was my original idea, was for everybody, was to have Rampage removed and put that hour onto Dynamite. Now, we're both of one mind, and to be honest, of most people's minds, that 3 hours of wrestling is far too much. But Raw has been 3 hours for 10 years or something now, or not far off it one way or the other. And in this last year or so, they're now gaining views on it. There are enough people who will put up with 3 hours. And I think recently they had Rampage tacked onto a Dynamite, and the Rampage got far better viewership than in its normal slot on Friday. So that was my reason for thinking that. But otherwise, I think having Collision on Saturday mornings, I don't necessarily think it all needs to be job matches or anything. I mean, it can still be like the other show, but I like the idea that it'd be more geared towards kids, or a younger audience, or families. Brighter presentation, a couple of recaps from Dynamite. It doesn't have to be the triple A. Well, I'm not saying triple A. It doesn't have to be the A show, but it can be the A show. It can be a joint A show with Dynamite if you've only got 2 a week. But with 3 shows, with Rampage and Collision and Dynamite, 1 show's an A show and there are 2 C shows these days, because Rampage and Collision are interchangeable and completely there is no importance to them.
Well, there will be with the way I hopefully present it, if I present it the right way, because, okay, let's get into, we went into wasteful money expenditures just now, the booking venues, the time slots. All right, and this is gonna talk about the roster and everything else and keeping the characters going. The identity of the show will help with the identity or the categorization of the characters. In other words, and we'll get to the why, I'm kind of previewing why I picked the roster I did as a base roster for Dynamite and Rampage. Dynamite is basically your WWE show. Larger than life characters, big guys, characters that kind of like drive storylines. You still have matches, you still have blood feuds or whatever there, but basically this show is presented, and it could be the one that you change the look of to be brighter, to be new brand colors, all these different things. Friday night at 10 p.m. just speaks to me as an ECW type product. More hardcore, more violence, adult themed stuff, what Raw should be in the 3rd hour. More adult themed, more sex, more violence, cursing. Let it stand out there Friday at 10 p.m. for the bar crowd, people that want to catch something late at night. Then, of course, Collision, which you may want to rename Collision if you're going to do the Saturday morning kid show or family friendly show. I don't know what the name is, but basically that's what I would see. The Rampage thing, which you think is interchangeable, I think the Friday at 10 p.m. time slot can work to their advantage, that it's too hot for your general TV, too hot for Saturday mornings, too violent for Saturday mornings, even too violent, too much blood, and too much sexuality than Wednesdays at 8 to 10. That's what I would do to make it stand out. And also you have to think about this when we get to the roster. I talked about these particular things, or I am going to talk about, or created it with the need to raise the ratings. Nothing personal against the talent. You're not relegated to a show. We need you on Collision, or we need you on Rampage to boost the ratings up. That's what I'm saying. When I put somebody on Rampage, it's not a punishment. It's basically, you're over, do your thing, and try to get those ratings up. That's the way that's my blueprint for why I created these rosters.
Before we get to the roster, there's one more thing that I realized we forgot to add in the list, and it's a very important one. Advertise properly, promote properly upcoming shows. Just not on Twitter. Do it on previous shows. Have some forward thinking weeks in advance. This is going to happen in 2 weeks. This is going to happen in 3 weeks. They've been doing a bit more of that recently, where I think a couple of weeks ago they had a full 8-match lineup of a future Dynamite. I mean, but they pretty much only released it on social media anyway. And I think it's one of those things that Tony Khan has a problem with dealing with, is the fact that not everybody lives on Twitter. So I'm sure he just posts that and think, well, everyone will see it. But the fact is that most people don't. And a lot of people who do promos as well, like the Jeff Jarrett thing a few weeks ago, if you'll remember, did a great 10-minute sit-down soliloquy about what Owen Hart and who's the country singer, Keith
Toby Keith.
Toby Keith, thank you. You know, what they meant to him and why he wanted to win the Owen Hart tournament. It was great. They only put 4 minutes on Collision because there was some worthless match that they had to put on instead, apparently. And then they only put the 10-minute interview on Twitter, social media. So the best stuff, some of the best stuff they do isn't on the shows, as well as all the promotion stuff like that.
It should be the other way around. It's some of the stuff that's not so great should be on social media, an exclusive match or a promo, things like that. That all needs to be cleaned up. Absolutely. We need quality over quantity. And even with a lot of quantity, everything needs to be vetted. And that's why I think these different, it's kind of a pecking order of shows, but it's also the Saturday morning, for example, the kids are going to be a little bit more forgiving than adults if mistakes are made or somebody's not quite there. And also there's something to be said where there's people that still message me or when they see me, say they grew up watching me. When they were a kid, they wouldn't miss ECW or they love the Right to Censor, which is weird to hear. But what I'm saying is let those kids find their heroes to attach themselves to and have an emotional connection with. That's missing.
Right, so as Stevie makes his way to the whiteboard, I challenged him before we started this show to come up with a base roster for AEW Dynamite and AEW Collision. Now, this pre-proposes that we're going to have a bit of a roster split as well, which Stevie's also going to describe and how that's going to work. But Stevie, over to you at the whiteboard. Who have you picked and why?
Well, thank you very much, James. This should be very, very interesting and fun in the comments because everybody will have their opinion, and that's what we want. Comment below. I'm going to try to explain why I picked, and it is a roster split, and the reason is, before we even get started, I really initiated a roster split to make events like Forbidden Door more special, to where this would be the WrestleMania where everybody from Rampage, Collision, Dynamite, all the different shows, New Japan Wrestling, it would make the event even more special than it already is. And if talents are constantly wrestling each other across the board and 3 shows every week, Forbidden Door is not that special. It's not that much of a novelty event. So here we're talking about AEW Dynamite. And I did say previously, I wanted to make this more like a WWE type show, and AEW fans, according to James, are going to hate that. But we need characters that are larger than life. We need to get the ratings up. The middle of the week, 8 to 10, we really need to make an impression. And this doesn't mean these are the only people that are going to be on the show. How big is the roster once again, James? How many people?
I think for the men's, was it like 118?
Yeah.
I just counted.
I think, yeah. It was well over 100. I think you said 180.
No, 118. And then there was the
okay.
women. Yeah, with the women, it's 155. But the women's is going to be a different video.
A completely dedicated segment to the women, and they deserve it. And they definitely need, right off the bat, like Toni Storm and everybody else, needs more care creatively from the creative team. So let's start. We have Swerve as AEW champion up here. The champions, by the way, we're not going to talk about the amount of belts. Swerve as the AEW champion, my idea would be you work all 3 shows. You're the world champion, meaning that you will defend your title, you will appear, you'll do something, and that will make each show special. Every week, probably not. But when Swerve shows up as champion, he works more. And what I feel like the champion should make more since you're working 3 times more. So there is some incentive to get the belt, to get the ball, and work 3 shows. Means you make more money as a talent. I have Edge, Adam Copeland here because he's a legend. He can help a lot of the younger talent out. And also, name recognition, people are going to tune in to see him. Keith Lee, larger than life, had a great initial WWE run that kind of fizzled out, but I feel like Keith Lee, and even if you pair him with Shane Taylor and reunite them as a team, you have 2 monsters right there as a tag team. I think too, James, let me know your opinion. I think we should do a tag team dedicated segment in the future, just like the women, because they have a lot of tag teams and they can really do some cool stuff with that.
Straight away, I'm noticing you've picked 2 people injured.
I did. Because even the presence of Adam Copeland and Keith Lee on TV, vignettes, comeback story, road to recovery. Why are we not like having him document this every week on TV? Why are you not
They should have
maximizing?
Creed. They should have Creed playing in the background as well, like the Triple H ones when he was coming back. But they were great.
They were great. Yeah, they were great. So if a talent is injured, use that. Even if you got to do the Saturday morning show and have some kind of package or have them cut a promo or even just kind of like do a FaceTime call with the commentators, you need to still have these guys on TV. So then we got Malachi Black. Definitely adds a character here, a darker character, and he can work. And he deserves that spotlight. A lot of these talents, too, they use them for like however many weeks, then they just kind of call them off out of nowhere. We need to make it to where everybody has their own little, kind of like segment of being over and staying over, and creative needs to work with them. MJF will draw ratings, and interacting with Edge, interacting with Keith Lee, with Malachi Black, interacting with the WWE known guys will get him over even more. That's just my opinion. Toni Storm, we said we're going to dedicate a segment to women, but Toni Storm is the women's champion. She works all 3 shows, and she's a character, and she is over, and I believe she draws ratings. So right there. So any questions about the first? And none of these are in a particular order, James. It's not like this is the top tier, middle tier, lower tier. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely none for now. I want to hear the rest of them.
Okay, you're the boss. This is going to probably surprise you. Big Bill. Big Bill, former WWE talent. I would even go as far to bring Enzo in and make them an act again, because people will interact with the opening promo. They have to, obviously kind of twist it around because they don't want to get sued. Neither do we, by the way, just putting it out there. But putting him there, he's larger than life. He's a big dude. Even on his own, he's going to draw some kind of interest. And then you kind of put him in the vein of interacting with these 4 or everybody else. But bringing Enzo in will get people talking, positive or negatively. And then you can put the act back together. Jack Perry. Jack Perry right now is over. I believe he's a good heel. He can interact. You can have him do stuff with Edge, Keith Lee, Black, him if he's a babyface, MJF, all that stuff. Even having, universes cross where Toni Storm interacts with Edge, interacts with Jack Perry, interacts with Malachi Black right there. Mercedes Moné. Now, some of these are more of a financial thing, James, because she's getting paid a ton of money. And right now, Dynamite is the most visible show, the highest rated show in the lineup. So we need to get a return on our investment. She just turned a heel. So she's a really strong heel that can once again interact with Toni Storm, or bringing girls onto the show to work angles and storylines with her as Toni Storm does her thing. Now, I also want to say, I know Toni Storm has a group, and there's a few talents that have their own stable. That includes the people in the group, just to let you know. So it's not just 15 people, 16 including Swerve. It's the people that are currently paired with them as well. Dustin Rhodes. Dustin has never gotten the push that he truly deserves in AEW. He's never gotten treated like a legend. He's never gotten treated like one of the most over characters in wrestling history. He can still go. And most importantly, with an MJF, and I would even put Malachi Black, Keith Lee, Jack Perry, Big Bill, and everybody else over here that are young people. That's a guy. These are all talents that can learn from Dustin. The Young Bucks are tag champs. They'll work all 3 shows, but I wanted to put them there for a particular reason, logistically, as far as management. I want you to guess what I think about that. No?
I know, that's fine.
Their management, they're the EVPs. I would assume you need an EVP or 2 to be on hand for every single TV. So they're on-air talent, but they're also backstage, they're agenting, they're on the headsets. So strictly more from a backstage thing, you need to have them there. And that's why Kenny Omega is not on Dynamite, because he needs to be on Rampage. Just my thought. Jeff Jarrett, you just talked about Jeff Jarrett works backstage, books the live events. He's a great character on TV. He would make a great agent. He would also make a great booker if you wanted to separate the book between Dynamite, Rampage, and Collision. I don't think Tony Khan's going to ever give that up, but Jeff has an incredible mind. Also, Jeff can work with everybody too. Danhausen, we talked about it. You need to have fun. You need some comedy. You need to not be so serious for the entire 2 hours. Danhausen, and he gets hurt a lot. So he's a character that doesn't need to wrestle. So you just put him out there. He has a little spot, and it's not even a little spot. It's a very important spot because it breaks it up. And being a comedy act, multiple times in my career, sometimes a guy like that will get more over than everybody else because he stands out. So Hook, young guy, currently he's over, not as over as he was, and that's Creative's fault. I would want him to work with all these people to learn and get even better. All right, I'm going to pair these two maybe together. I don't know. Lance Archer and Luchasaurus, way larger than life. You can see here with the size of everybody, this is the show for big men. This is the show for the most part for giants. Lance, Luchasaurus, whether they wrestle each other, he wrestles him, he wrestles him, he wrestles him, he wrestles him. Now, do you see the matchups now, the storylines, the things that could happen based on that? So that's my 15, 16 count and swerve. What do you think?
I was getting worried at the first bit because I was thinking you picked two people who are injured, but then it's grown into a decent mix of age, experience, youth, which is sort of what you want, but
And
you
size.
coming from ECW
And size, too.
and size especially. Now, coming from ECW, I'm sure a bit of Paul Heyman's booking prowess or theories rubbed off you at one point. What do you think of the idea that you should only have one legend on a roster? Because obviously he picked Terry Funk, who you worked with quite a few times.
Well, we didn't have any other legends on the roster, so we only really had available one legend every single week, and that was Terry. People that were potential legends or way over TV talents, they were passing through between WCW and WWE. So, and Terry was willing to work, and Terry believed in the company. Here, we have the excellent problem of having too many legends, too many people that are big, too many people that are over. But with this roster as a base, there's going to be more people than this that will kind of rotate in and out. But with this roster, then you got Swerve as champion. This dude can learn a whole lot from a lot of people on this roster, whether they have experience or not. The different styles, the different size. Swerve can now learn different styles outside of his own. So you have him as champion, you may as well surround him with an excellent supporting cast. And I believe right here, you have enough to at least gain interest for the first week to a month. And that's when you got to grab them. So any other questions about Dynamite?
Yeah, I've got one question. Where does Christian fit into all this? Do you split him away from Luchasaurus?
I do, because I want to repackage Luchasaurus because he's not a wrestling dinosaur anymore. You know what I mean? Either you unmask him, keep him with Christian, and that's why I put Adam Copeland on this, because the Rampage roster has Christian on it. So there's Christian. So
if we just go back to the Dynamite thing,
Sure.
one more thing this is my suggestion, is that I would split the Young Bucks away from Jack Perry, because I think visually they're combined heat, because they're all heels and everything, but visually they're very similar looking and they always hang out together. And I think that they could draw better heat with Jack Perry, you know, like a Shawn Michaels and a Sid kind of thing, or Jack Perry and maybe Luchasaurus, for example. That Jack Perry always has a heater, someone bigger than him who he can hide behind when the going gets too tough. But then if he hangs around with the Young Bucks, then there's no one bigger than anybody else there, and they've all got too similar of a way of drawing heat in that respect. Do you agree or disagree with my assessment?
I a little bit of both. I'm not trying to be middle of the road, but I had a thought too. Reuniting Luchasaurus and Jack Perry as heels and having Luchasaurus be his bodyguard, his backup once again in a different twist from their baby faces. But I would like to see Luchasaurus with the mask off. I said my main priority with putting the Young Bucks on this show was for the behind the scenes to backstage their EVPs. We could interchange them with Kenny Omega. Would you think Kenny Omega would fit in better here?
Kenny Omega's another. Do you know?
Similar.
No, I think
Similar though.
Yeah,
But Kenny Omega
Yeah,
can get a great rub from all these legends and WWE talents. I just put Kenny on Rampage because he's an EVP and we need him backstage to offset so Khan can delegate a little bit to these guys. So it's strictly from a management or nothing to do creatively. But they can get heat. And I believe if you put Jack Perry in one say hour one and Young Bucks in hour two and never have them in the same hour of Dynamite, you can definitely separate them. So it's just, this is a booking meeting, by the way. James, what we're having here is basically looking at our draft board, our booking, our creative to see what we can do. This is not set in stone. This is a starting point. Like we need to spend weeks on this kind of stuff as it kind of, injuries. Somebody's contract's up. Somebody's getting paid way too much money, so we need the user. There's all these different, these guys don't get along with these guys. We might have to put them on separate shows. That's the world we live in.
Well, here's something else. And we can't have Swerve Strickland because he's the world champion. He's the star of all the shows. But who is the star of Dynamite?
That could be the question that somebody, that could be the first angle. Who's the franchise?
Shane Douglas.
Well, you can bring Shane Douglas in to present who the franchise at AEW is. Still a big fan of Shane's show. I did not replace Shane. Will you tell the people?
No, you did not replace Shane. I'd say MJF there because also you've got to look at youth as well. You've got you've got Adam Copeland, you've got Jeff Jarrett. They're both in their 50s. Keith Lee looks like he's in his 50s. You definitely need to have more youth, and MJF is still in his 20s, and I think he can lead that show. I would suggest he would be, with your roster, he would be the lead star other than Swerve or whoever the champion will be.
I'd agree with that, but I'll also challenge anybody else on the roster here or any other show that comes on here to usurp him, take his spot in a good, friendly, competitive way. MJF has that spot by default, but he didn't have that spot initially. He was just a loudmouth heel. He put himself in that spot. What I'm saying here too, by the way, you're talking about Jeff, you're talking about Edge and maybe Keith Lee to an extent. We need to maximize the remaining time they have in their career to help cement their legacy and help pass the torch to the next generation. So that's why I'm mixing it up like this. Even him injured could teach all these guys something. Dustin's even older, right? So Dustin can still go, and Dustin can teach these guys everything, hopefully, that they can carry on to be over like Dustin, like Edge, like, MJF is. This guy, they haven't even gotten the mileage out of. Malachi Black. Also, just another thought. There's always a potential that these people are going back to WWE after their deal's up. So we really need to get their knowledge into the younger generation that he isn't going anywhere. All right, here is the AEW Rampage lineup. Once again, champions work every show. I didn't put Toni Storm in this, but it should have been her and Swerve up at the top. Okay, so let me repeat what I said. Rampage is your ECW TV show. Blood, guts, violence, adult storylines, cursing, all these different things. And I feel like the flagship, the franchise for that is going to be Jon Moxley. One of them, actually. Next, Darby Allin, for obvious reasons, right? Diving, doing stunts. Eddie Kingston, history of Moxley, also a brawler. Kenny Omega doesn't fit in there, but Kenny Omega had some awesome matches with Jon Moxley. So we have history, we have a storyline, and we also have some new type of angles and storylines that can happen. The Acclaimed, just on the raps alone, they're a great entertaining act. They have charisma, they have poise, they have presence. But how many people go on YouTube just to see Max Caster's raps? So I would put them on there. Once again, the tag team stuff, we might have a whole show for tag teams. Billy Gunn, a veteran that looks incredible, can still go and can teach all the younger talent and can work a hardcore style if he needs to. Top Flight, here we have an angle here, but we're talking about action. We're talking about basically, in my estimation, and say for ECW, let's use this. ECW, you're talking about Rey Mysterio, Junto Guerrero. These guys have that. Cruiserweights in WCW on Nitro, they're a special attraction. Then on the opposite end, FTR, very basic, brawling, good old school style, complements this style, complements that style. Samoa Joe, very much a Ring of Honor presentation, a Ring of Honor moveset. He can work with Omega. He can work with Eddie, Darby, Moxley, Bill, anybody. Samoa Joe is definitely like more of a gritty, hardcore fighter. He brings the fight aspect to Rampage. Christian Cage and the group he's with, lots of charisma, great promos, tons of heat. He can call himself the franchise on this show, repackage himself. He can have great matches with Joe, Omega, Kingston, anybody. Billy, he's worked a ton of times right there. Okay, so now we get into a little bit more of an international flavor. Okada, Will Ospreay, Shibata, Danielson. Then you have Jay Lethal. Once again, Jay Lethal, Joe, Christian Cage, he can work with anybody. It's all interchangeable. But these four guys here get such an international flavor, especially these three guys from New Japan. Bryan Danielson can work with anybody. And there's our 15, and you got Swerve as champion, where everybody is trying to become champion or earn title shots. Or this also right away, what we see with both of these, and with the world champion working all three shows, now wins and losses do matter. Your ranking matters. Your wins in the past, whatever. Now it can be based on what Tony tried to do, which is whoever wins the most matches is on a streak, has the best ranking, gets the title shot. Any questions? I feel like a cheat.
One name that I've noticed that you didn't include in is Chris Jericho.
Good segue. This is my other idea. AEW authority figures. Do you like the picture of Khan I picked? It was the best one. There was no, everything was him screaming at people or on the microphone, 9 nights. So I couldn't screenshot the dancing. I didn't want any more trouble from him. So this is where the learning tree gimmick of Chris Jericho, his character, can go across to all three shows or be an authority figure on one show. Chris Jericho being the authority figure, being the GM, whatever you might call it. Here we are with him giving advice, doing whatever, being obnoxious to the talent, and then eventually, whoever needs to get over, needs to rub, will work a program with Chris. Now, Chris, just like Edge, just like Keith Lee, just like not just like those, or what we're talking about is more like Edge and other people in the age category, Jeff Jarrett. We only have a limited amount of time physically for Chris to be able to have the matches he wants to have. So this gives Chris a break from the physicality, from injuries, get his body back to where it feels good, and really use him as a special attraction. His character, his promos, his presence is what either gets him heat or people love him, not the matches themselves. Those are used sparingly. He's an authority figure. Nigel McGuinness is the babyface version of that authority figure. Not sure if all three of these are all three shows, or they have two of the shows and Khan has one, or they have Dynamite, Rampage. Tony Khan is basically going to be brought in for, say, the final vote or the final decision, or they consult Tony. Remember, I don't care what anybody says. Tony Khan loves being on TV. He loves it. So the boys try to figure out how can we still get him on TV and feed his ego. This is the way to do it without having Khan on every single thing. So that's how we use Chris. He's still a wrestler. And as a matter of fact, I might have him wrestle Nigel McGuinness if they have an argument about a decision. That doesn't have to be it, but that's one of the ideas off the top of my head.
Okay, then. So we had a good few dozen people there who are making the main roster and who the storylines and angles are going to revolve around, essentially, on Rampage and Dynamite in the Stevie Richards version of AEW going forward. But as you were talking, I wrote down a bunch of names of who didn't make the cut, essentially. A few of these are injured. A few of these are wrestlers of note that are just not there or not around, and some people are on every single week at the moment who you decide not to put on your roster. So I'm curious as to know why. So I'm going to give you some names. Adam Page, Adam Cole, Gun Club, Brian Cage, Brody King, Claudio Castagnoli, easy for me to say, Daniel Garcia, Jay White, Mark Briscoe, Miro, Rusev, Orange Cassidy, Pac, Powerhouse Hobbs, I think he's injured, Phoenix and Penta, Roderick Strong, who's on Collision, in fact, that we watch, Roosh, Sammy Guevara, who is still suspended, and Wardlow. So, is Wardlow injured as well?
I couldn't tell you. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is the thing. They have so many people that they call off, and there's so many people I didn't know were still at the company.
Yeah. So these are people as well. I should also say that Brody... I nearly wrote Brody Lee. Brody Lee is permanently on the roster in memoriam. So it's actually 117 on the roster. So of all those names, why didn't you pick some of them? And of any of these names, could you cull a few of them as well that wouldn't make it into Stevie Richards AEW?
Well, I'm telling you, as a former talent, as somebody who loves the fact that Tony Khan pays the talent, keeps them on their contract, takes care of them, especially, like I said before, in this tough economy, I don't want anybody to ever get released. I will put an asterisk next to that because I think there's a good happy medium for people, because what you just talked about is a lot of these people aren't even on the show. They disappeared. Most notably, Miro is the first person I look at that comes to mind. You're doing the talent a disservice by keeping them under contract and not allowing them to get better, to make more money, to get themselves over. In other words, what's worse? Sitting at home knowing that you're not going to do anything and you're probably going to end up getting your contract not released, but not renewed. Now you're starting from scratch rather than going to New Japan, going to another promotion, going to Europe, going anywhere to still get better, get recognized, and also keep your name out there amongst the fans. That's the issue. So when we talk about releasing or getting rid of or doing, it's not necessarily, especially with the names on this list, that you suck, that you're not getting over. It's mostly this list and the people that aren't getting used right now. It's an indictment on Tony Khan and creative and AEW. Because without the office and the machine and somebody putting you on TV, you don't have the opportunity. And what I'm looking at here is every single person, including some of the younger guys like Gun Club, when they're given something, they're charismatic, they have energy, they can work. Of course, Billy Gunn's sons, they can work. And if they end up leaving AEW or getting released, it's not their fault. They're doing everything they can with everything they're handed, or what little they're handed. I left Adam Page off, not by omission or not thing, because I saw the thing with him and the Young Bucks. So he can plug into that very easily. But Adam Page is also over as a singles wrestler. But they cooled him down. They forgot about him. So what does that mean? That's not Adam Page's fault. That's their fault. Adam Cole comes in with a bunch of fanfare. And before this, where you can get into the booking, but Adam Cole comes in as a surprise. People do Adam Cole, baby, all that stuff. Then he turns heel 5 seconds later. Then it's glossed over when Danielson comes out. So you did that guy a disservice. Second one of his debut. He could have been a babyface for 6 months and then turned. We're also looking at Brian Cage on this list. Brian is a generational talent. And just from looks, walking through an airport, Brian Cage stands out. That's enough for Vince McMahon. And I'm shocked Brian Cage is not in WWE right now. As a matter of fact, I would dare say you're doing Brian Cage a favor. This is one of the guys you would do a favor if you let him go, or you basically said, we're not renewing your contract. This guy can go somewhere else and get over. Unfortunately, too, Brian Cage, one of the nicest guys I met in the short time I've been around him. Very nice guy. Almost too nice. One reason I say that is he put Tessa Blanchard over clean in TNA. Nothing wrong with that because the office wanted it, but the perception of him drastically changed after that. And I believe his stock went down in a lot of people's eyes. I don't know how much Tony Khan is paying him, but I don't know if he fully recovered from that as far as perception. Brody King, Ring of Honor. Claudio Castagnoli, Ring of Honor. Daniel Garcia, Ring of Honor. Jay White, not so sure. Maybe Ring of Honor or even maybe Collision for him. Like I said, the rosters I came up with were a base roster. That means you could have another 5 to 10 people on each show that rotate. Mark Briscoe, Ring of Honor. Miro, I put him in the Brian Cage category. You're not doing him any favors. Miro should go back to WWE. CJ Perry, her contract ran out too, or she got released, right?
She was released in April, yeah, very quietly.
Those two should get back together and be Lana and Rusev.
Well, they've just divorced.
But they were doing business together though, right?
Yeah, but I don't know how keen they might be to get back together, at least on screen.
I wasn't aware of that. That to me, I'm just thinking booking and,
Yeah.
and money and all that stuff. Orange Cassidy, the only reason I left him off the list is I'm not quite sure how we can reinvent him. Now, he's one of Tony's best friends, so politically, we have to find a spot for him. Let's be honest. We're sitting in the booking meeting. Kevin Sullivan has famously said to me more times, he's like, it's not just about booking this guy versus this guy. We have to see, all right, have these guys ever gotten into a fight? Did they not get along? Did one steal the other's girl? Are they willing to work with each other, or is it just not even worth the effort? These are important things. So we're fantasy booking. We're not booking. He's booking real stuff. But I want to say that we have to put Orange Cassidy on the show so Tony Khan doesn't get pissed at us politically. But I really would like, I think the Orange Cassidy babyface quiet thumbs up gimmick needs to evolve, needs to change. Orange Cassidy as a heel could draw. He has to talk. I don't know what kind of promos he can cut. All right, Pac had a great character, great gimmick, very dark. What was he called, the Bastard?
Mm-hmm. He's an interesting one though, because
what happened?
I think
what happened?
Somewhere between having to fly him in, there was lockdowns that was causing issues earlier on in his AEW career. Then he was injured, and I think he still lives my way, or not too far from it. He lives in England, I think. So he is more of an administrative challenge than most. I suspect he's living around here like Will Ospreay still lives in England, as well as flying in every single week. But with they've got more plans for Will Ospreay, of course.
Well, maybe Tony can do a thing like Paul Heyman used to do, and I was Missy Hyatt. Someone else was Melissa Hyatt. Someone was Paul E. Heyman. Somebody was Paul F. Heyman. We had tickets where before you had to show an ID for the flight so you could use his points. All right. Pac's proven he's a character. And that's another one. If he went back with that evil bastard gimmick in WWE, that would get over. That would really get over. Powerhouse Hobbs. This is a name I would put on Dynamite. Land of the Giants.
Mm-hmm.
The guy can work. He needs experience. I would probably also, maybe for about a month or two, here's where the Collision show on Saturday mornings is your farm league, is your minors to get a new gimmick going and experiment and do different things. That would be where I would put him, as well as maybe Orange Cassidy. Once again, Orange Cassidy could be a great kids act. He could be the franchise on that Collision show Saturday mornings. All right. Phoenix and Penta. I think now we have our WCW Nitro Cruiserweights. Now we're building up action. This is where Rampage could be something special. We open up Rampage at 10 p.m. with a lucha match, with a cruiserweight match. Get them warmed up. Nice 6 to 8 minute match. And that's another thing. Times on these matches should be dramatically shorter, where the pay-per-view matches are longer. That's what I believe.
We've not talked about something here that I've just realised. Dynamite's 2 hours and Rampage is 1 hour. Are we assuming in this that those times are the same, or are we assuming that they both got the same?
We're assuming the times are the same.
Okay.
Your Rampage show is your Attitude Era Crash TV. The hour goes by. It could be your highest rated show based on the time investment alone of the audience. But you have to change the identity to match Friday night, 10 p.m., turn it on in the bar. Right before you go out, you watch it to get yourself like pumped up and everything. It's got to be dopamine hits for an hour. Roderick Strong. This would be a Ring of Honor, or he's in a group. See, this is the other thing. This is what makes it confusing. We're too far into everybody being in a group. Way too many groups.
Well, the thing is, I mean, he was with Adam Cole, Undisputed Kingdom, but I mean, is that even a group at the moment? Let's just assume he's not in a group.
Roddy can go. Roddy's an athlete. If he wants to be a character, I'd go back to this. 2 hours Saturday morning. Roddy, do you want to be a character? What have you always wanted to be? What did you always imagine yourself as a pro wrestler? Collision. And to me, it's not a punishment. It's a way to keep you fresh. It's a way to keep you motivated. It's a way to have you have some sort of creative control. Go there. Hey, if you want to do some hardcore stuff, if you're a big fan of ECW, let's put you on Rampage, see what happens. You know what I mean? Not dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous enough from what I watch, but you have the stunts, you have the blood, some of the other stuff, the cursing. That way, WBD can say, okay, Saturday mornings, we're going to have characters, we're going to appeal to the families, no cursing, PG. Dynamite's a little bit of a mix. Rampage, we're going basically almost rated R.
We have four more people. I added one after I mentioned Wheeler Yuta as well. So we've got Rush, Sammy Guevara, Wardlow, and Wheeler Yuta.
Rush would be ROH if you're going to be on anything. And this makes Honor Club maybe worth the subscription to some people. You have to identify your demographics of who are our subscribers. I would do a focus group, a survey. If those 10,000 people love people that were in Ring of Honor before, I put Shane Taylor in there too, but I would team Shane up with Keith Lee to protect Keith Lee's body, where he only has to do half the work. And now we have giants. So they used to team up in ROH together. All right, Sammy Guevara. Here's why I would ask Khan about everybody, but specifically somebody like Sammy Guevara, or even Ricky Starks is another one we forgot.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to WWE? Ricky Starks, the minute his contract's up, I have no doubt Cody's going to get him in an NXT.
Ricky Starks is just one of those people. He was with Big Bill, and now he's not, and he's just disappeared. He's not injured. He's just not on TV anymore.
Oh, let's stop right there, by the way. You just said, okay, Roderick Strong's with Adam Cole. They had a history. That's fine. You just said that Ricky Starks is with Big Bill. Why? We have to ask these, like, what brings characters together? What causes characters to break up? What causes characters to want to fight? We don't have the why or the why not. This is what, well, got to get everybody on TV. That's not a reason to book people on TV. Wardlow is, you took a guy that was literally the next Goldberg and you ruined him. Wardlow would have to be on Collision. He'd have to be a mix between Collision and ROH to reinvent himself. Once you see a character and you see the staleness come, you see the character on a downward trajectory, let's just talk about it. Anybody, including myself, Right to Censor was over. So you're going to put people over after right to censor. You're just going to keep putting people over until we kind of destroy the character. Then you need to go away. Then when you come back, you're just kind of in there doing whatever, opening match, this, that, the other thing, putting people over. When we know that, like, okay, you're back, you're in shape, you haven't lost a beat, let's give you a little bit more. WWE does that for right or wrong reasons. They do it the best way as far as if you're hot, you're on TV. If you start to cool down, we got to take you off, maybe bring you back as something else. The Wardlow thing is probably you wasted, not Brian Cage is one thing because he never really was presented the way that Wardlow was. But Wardlow, way up here, now Wardlow, I didn't even remember who was on the roster. That's not Wardlow's fault. That's Tony Khan's fault.
On that, we should wrap up the roster thing. So I think we've basically said Wardlow needs rehab. Miro should really go along with Brian Cage, not to fire them for the wrong reasons. It's the reason that they need to go somewhere fresh to rehab.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Sorry about that. Here's where Tony Khan, you speak to your personality, which I heard you're an awesome guy. You're a great guy. You care about the talent. You facilitate their next stop. In other words, keep them under contract. You can unofficially release them, but get them 6 months in New Japan. Get them a deal on another indie. Get them deals on, say, over in Europe. There's tons of promotions, right? They can work 4 or 5 days a week. So I would say that is where, Tony Khan can save face with the talent and not be a heel. I have you set up with your next job. And there you go. Johnny Ace has done that, by the way, as much as vilify him. Johnny Ace got a couple talents booked in Japan at one point when he had a stroke over there. Yeah, there was a couple people that said that Johnny Ace called, Japan, and I went over there and I worked for Japan. I have to see for accuracy who the talents were, but I do recall specifically 2 talents that he had called. Now, he can call and you can have a ton of heat. I don't know how people feel about him over there, but the promoter, the booker, talent relations people, they all know somebody that they can put a good word in for the talent to give them a launching pad. Now, are you going to get paid a ton of money? No, but you have to go away. You have to repay your dues, reinvent yourself, and then when you come back, demand even more money probably. That's the way it hopefully will work.
On that, we do have one more segment. We promised this. I think this is already going to be our longest show ever. So we'll keep this. I don't know how concise we can keep this because it's something that I want to know a lot about, and it is the secrets of the wrestling rings revealed with Stevie Richards.
We can go 20 to 30 minutes on this. We should wait till, let's just put a pin in episode 5. We will do that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Maybe even as a whiteboard. You're the boss, but maybe even as a whiteboard segment where I can visually show the steps it would take and do all that stuff.
Oh, you want to do that? Okay, then. So, I'm sorry, everybody. Stevie has spoken. You don't get your secrets of the ring this week. You can wait. So,
they didn't even know about it or want it. But now that I took it away from them, they're going to be pissed.
Yeah, tough.
Thanks, James.
Right. Well, no worries.
Man.
Dude, the heat all...
Dutch was right about you.
Hey, I was right about Dutch as well, so we're even there. Right, so on that note then, I guess we are going to... Well, that's a really good teaser for next week, if nothing else, because I've written... Do you know, that took me so long to write all these questions as well, so I've actually done a load of work for next week already, so I'm pleased with that. So, Secrets of the Ring are going to be coming next week as well. What else are we going to talk about next week? I want to talk about Ric Flair. What did you want to talk about?
I'd like to talk about Ric Flair. We haven't gotten a tweet from Flair yet. I feel lonely. Dutch is not going to log up all the angry tweets from Flair. I want to join.
Yeah, okay, then. So we'll preliminarily say Ric Flair. We're definitely going to be talking about Secrets of the Ring revealed and all different rings because honestly, we could go. That could be an hour and a half segment.
And Cody Rhodes rebuts to my rebuttal.
Yes, Cody. I nearly called him Cody Butts there, but I think that might be his porn star alternative. On that basis, listen, everybody, thank you so much for watching. We hope we catch you again next week, every single Friday on YouTube and all podcast platforms. Stevie, over to you. Any more plugs or just the outro and whatever you want to do?
Once again, it's going to be a recurring, repetitive theme that we thank everybody for the support. I think we're about to hit 23,000 subs. The views on all the stuff and the interaction is just awesome. And hopefully with this segment about you picking your roster on which show and what you would do with those shows, we welcome interaction. We welcome the comments, positive or negative. It's funny sometimes to read the negative ones. It's kind of cool. But that's about it. Stevie Richards Fitness is my other YouTube channel. Please check that out. Also, cameo.com/Stevie Richards. As far as affiliates that I run on the fitness stuff, if you could check the descriptions out on the fitness videos, I do have recommended brands if you're looking for home, garage, gym stuff, or any kind of fitness equipment in general. But that about does it for this week for episode 4. And we can talk next week also about James being mad because I cut the ring segment out of episode 4.
I'm fine. It's past 3 o'clock. I've not had lunch yet. You've done me a favor.
Good. See, we made up. We made up in 2 minutes time. So that is about it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great week. See you next week at episode 5.